Have you ever been thrown into a situation that felt like a lion's den? A place where everything around you seemed ready to devour your peace, your hope, your faith? Maybe it wasn't literal lions, but the pressure, the betrayal, the silence of God in the middle of your darkest night. It all felt just as real. You prayed, but nothing changed. You stood firm, but the outcome looked hopeless. If that's you, this story isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror. The complete story of Daniel, the prophet who survived the lion's den, is not just about survival in a pit with beasts. It's about unshakable faith in a world designed to break you. In the next few minutes, you'll discover how one man's loyalty to God turned a death sentence into a divine testimony, and how your own trials could be the stage for God's greatest miracle in your life. Ready to find the courage to trust again? Stay with me. This could change everything. In the grand palace of Babylon, surrounded by officials, soldiers, and a roaring crowd, the three young Hebrews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, stood unshaken before the furious king. Nebuchadnezzar, his face contorted with rage, demanded once more that they bow to the golden statue. But their answer echoed through the marble halls with divine boldness. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. But even if he does not, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." This defiance shook the atmosphere. The furnace was heated 7 times hotter than usual, so intense that the flames killed the soldiers who threw the young men in. Bound and cast into the fire, it seemed their fate was sealed. But then something astonishing occurred. The king, peering into the flames, leapt to his feet in shock. "Did we not throw 3 men into the fire? I see 4 men walking unbound, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." The God of Israel had entered the furnace himself. King Nebuchadnezzar called them out of the fire. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego emerged untouched. No burns, no smell of smoke, not even a singed hair. The impossible had happened. The crowd fell into stunned silence. The king, overwhelmed, proclaimed, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants." They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own. A decree was issued. No one in the entire kingdom was to speak against the God of Israel. And once again, faithfulness was honored with favor. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were promoted in the province of Babylon. But this was only the beginning. The story of Daniel's unshakable devotion to God was still unfolding. His life would continue to intersect with kings, dreams, visions, and divine revelations. And soon, another test would arise, one that would thrust Daniel into a night of terror, into the very jaws of death. Years passed, and Babylon fell into the hands of a new ruler, King Darius the Mede. Daniel, now older and even more respected, rose to become one of the highest officials in the kingdom. His honesty and excellence were unmatched, so much so that Darius considered appointing him over the entire empire. But envy breeds deception. The other officials, unable to find any fault in Daniel's work, decided to attack the one place they knew he would never compromise, his faith. They devised a cunning plan and tricked the king into signing a decree. For 30 days, no one could pray to any god or man except King Darius. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown into the lion's den. Daniel knew the decree. He understood the danger. Yet his response was unwavering. As he had done every day, Daniel went to his upstairs room, opened the windows toward Jerusalem, and prayed 3 times a day on his knees, giving thanks to God. The trap was set. His enemies burst in, catching him in the act. And with heavy hearts, the king's officials dragged Daniel before Darius. Though the king admired Daniel, the law of the Medes and Persians could not be repealed. Reluctantly, Darius ordered Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den. "May your God, whom you serve, continually rescue you," the king said, his voice trembling with guilt and sorrow. A stone was rolled over the den's entrance and sealed. That night the king could not eat or sleep. At dawn, he rushed to the den and cried out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God been able to rescue you from the lions?" And then came the voice, calm and triumphant, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight." Darius was overjoyed. Daniel was lifted from the den without a scratch on his body. The God who had rescued him from fire had now silenced the lions. And justice was swift. The conspirators who plotted against Daniel were thrown into the same den and met the fate they had intended for him. King Darius issued a new decree to every people, nation, and language across the empire. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed, his dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. From exile to governor, from a captive youth to a prophet who would shape empires, Daniel's life was a testament to the power of unshakable faith. His visions would go on to unveil the future of nations, the coming of the Messiah, and the final triumph of God's eternal kingdom. In a world filled with compromise and fear, Daniel stood as a blazing light, unyielding and unafraid, proving to every generation that true devotion to God is never in vain. In the heart of the royal court, as tension clung to the walls like smoke, King Nebuchadnezzar stood before Daniel, consumed by the mystery of his dream. "The spirit of the holy gods is in you," the king declared with reverence, "and no mystery is too difficult for you. This was the dream I had. Interpret it for me." The vision he described was both grand and ominous. A colossal tree that reached to the heavens, visible to every corner of the earth. Its abundant fruit fed all creatures, while birds nested in its branches and animals rested beneath its shade. But then a messenger from heaven descended, ordering that the mighty tree be chopped down, leaving only the stump and roots. As the words echoed through the palace, Daniel's heart grew heavy. He understood the dream's divine warning. Yet he hesitated, his thoughts stirring like a storm. The king, sensing Daniel's unease, reassured him, "Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation frighten you." With solemn courage and profound compassion, Daniel began to speak, not as a mere interpreter, but as a servant of the Most High. "O king," Daniel replied, his voice steady though the message was severe, "I wish this dream applied to your enemies and its interpretation to those who seek your harm." He revealed that the grand tree symbolized Nebuchadnezzar himself. His kingdom had expanded to unimaginable heights, offering shelter, sustenance, and strength to many. Yet the decree to cut it down signaled a coming fall. The king would be stripped of power, cast away from society, and reduced to living like a wild beast. This humbling judgment would last for 7 seasons until he recognized that the Most High rules over all kingdoms and places whomever he wills upon the throne. Daniel, with a heart full of mercy, offered counsel that could perhaps avert this fate. "Renounce your sins by doing what is right. Show mercy to the oppressed. Perhaps then your prosperity will be prolonged." Though visibly troubled by Daniel's interpretation, the king ignored the prophet's urgent plea. A year passed and pride took root once more in Nebuchadnezzar's heart. As he walked on the roof of his palace, boasting of his majesty and the power of his hands, a voice thundered from heaven, sealing his fate in a single moment. Immediately the prophecy was fulfilled. Sanity fled from the king like a bird startled into flight. Driven away from mankind, Nebuchadnezzar dwelled among the beasts. He ate grass like an ox, his body drenched with the dew of heaven. Time passed, 7 years of madness, isolation, and degradation. His hair grew long like eagle's feathers and his nails curved like bird's claws. Yet even in this desolation, God's mercy had not departed. When Nebuchadnezzar finally lifted his eyes to heaven, acknowledging the sovereignty of the Almighty, his understanding returned like a flood. The king stood once more in the court, not in arrogance but in awe. He praised the Most High, declaring that his dominion is everlasting, and his kingdom endures through all generations. Restored to power with even greater majesty, Nebuchadnezzar became a living testimony that no human power can stand against the will of God. The dream had come to pass. The tree had fallen. And from the stump, new humility had grown. Years later, Babylon's throne passed to Belshazzar, son of Nebuchadnezzar. But unlike his father, Belshazzar's heart was proud and irreverent. One night, amidst wine and laughter, the king committed a grave sacrilege. He summoned the sacred vessels taken from the temple in Jerusalem, objects consecrated to the God of Israel, and used them to toast false gods of gold, silver, bronze, wood, and stone. But as they raised their cups in blasphemous celebration, the atmosphere shifted. A hand, disembodied and radiant, appeared and began writing on the wall. Fear paralyzed the king. His face turned pale, his knees buckled, and panic swept through the royal hall. None of his wise men could decipher the cryptic message. Then the queen spoke of Daniel, now old but renowned for his unmatched wisdom. Daniel was summoned. Belshazzar offered him riches and rank if he could explain the writing. But Daniel, true to his God, refused the rewards and stood unshaken, prepared to deliver the truth. Before revealing the message, Daniel rebuked the king with piercing clarity. "You knew what happened to your father," he said. "You saw how God humbled him, yet you have not humbled yourself. Instead, you have mocked the Lord by defiling his holy vessels." Then turning to the inscription, Daniel revealed its meaning. Mean tekel, parson. Mean, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the scales and found wanting. Parson, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The room fell silent, the weight of divine judgment settling over every heart. That very night, the prophecy unfolded with terrifying precision. Belshazzar was killed, and Darius the Mede seized control of Babylon. Daniel's God had once again proven supreme, executing justice through the hand of a faithful servant and altering the course of history through a single act of divine intervention. Under the rule of Darius, Daniel's excellence once again set him apart. The new king, impressed by his wisdom and integrity, appointed Daniel as one of 3 top administrators over the entire kingdom. Soon, Darius even planned to place him over all the land. This honor, however, stirred jealousy among other officials. Desperate to destroy Daniel, they searched for a flaw in his conduct. But Daniel's life was above reproach, blameless in governance, steadfast in faith. Frustrated, they devised a sinister scheme. "We will never find any basis for charges against this man unless it has something to do with the law of his God." Knowing Daniel's devotion, they manipulated the king into issuing a decree forbidding prayer to any god or man except the king himself for 30 days. The punishment for disobedience? The lion's den. But Daniel, as always, remained unwavering. He continued to pray openly 3 times a day, lifting his heart to heaven, trusting not in royal favor, but in the eternal faithfulness of his God. Well, we're almost at the end, but I noticed that you still haven't left your like. This is very important for YouTube to continue sharing our content with you, so leaving a like is free and will help you. Thank you, and let's get back to the video. In the silence of the royal palace, a heavy decision weighed on the heart of King Darius. Bound by his own decree, he had no choice but to command that Daniel be thrown into the lion's den. But before this act was carried out, Darius looked into Daniel's eyes and uttered a phrase that revealed the inner turmoil of a man torn between duty and belief. "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." These were not just words of farewell, they were a cry of desperate hope. A stone was rolled over the mouth of the den, sealing Daniel inside, and the king himself marked it with his royal seal, along with the seals of his nobles. This was more than a formality. It was a public declaration that no one could interfere, that the sentence was final. But what men sealed in hopelessness, God was about to open with divine power. This marked the climax of a dark plot, where political envy sought to silence the righteous, and yet it became the stage for one of the most powerful demonstrations of faith and divine intervention in all of Scripture. That night, while lions prowled silently around Daniel, the true battle raged in the heart of King Darius. The book of Daniel gives us a rare glimpse into the soul of a pagan monarch transformed by conviction. Darius returned to his palace, but instead of feasting and entertainment, he chose to fast. No musicians played. No dancers performed. No sleep found him. He was a king in mourning, not for a death that had occurred, but for a righteous man he feared he might have condemned. Every hour that passed likely echoed with Daniel's last words, and perhaps, with the unshakable image of a man whose devotion to God could not be bribed or broken. The man who ruled an empire now found himself powerless. Powerless to reverse his decree. Powerless to silence his conscience. But there was one hope, the God of Daniel. And in that long sleepless night, Darius began to believe that perhaps this God was more than just another deity among many. Meanwhile, inside the lion's den, a supernatural calm prevailed. Though the Bible does not describe the details of Daniel's night, his testimony in the morning is enough to stir awe. "My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions." What kind of peace must have filled Daniel's heart, knowing that divine hands had turned a pit of death into a sanctuary of safety? Surrounded by creatures designed to kill, Daniel experienced the tangible protection of heaven. No claw touched him. No tooth tore his flesh. The same God who split seas, who led his people through fire and wilderness, now silenced predators with a whisper. Daniel had been found innocent before God, and God had answered with deliverance. This was no lucky escape. It was a deliberate act of divine justice, performed not only to save a man, but to awaken a king and shake an empire. At the first light of dawn, Darius rushed to the den. His royal robe fluttered behind him, dust rising at his feet, driven by a singular question that burned in his soul. Did God answer? As he neared the pit, his voice cracked with emotion. "Daniel, servant of the living God, he called, "Has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" The silence that followed must have felt eternal, until, from within the darkness, a voice emerged, "O King, live forever." It was Daniel, alive, unharmed, testifying not only to his innocence, but to the power of a living God who rules over lions and laws. The king was overcome with joy. He ordered that Daniel be lifted out of the den immediately, and the people gathered to witness the impossible. Not a scratch was found on him. The very beast that had moments earlier torn others to pieces had not even left a mark on Daniel because, Scripture says, he had trusted in his God. What happened next would alter the spiritual climate of an entire empire. King Darius, now fully convinced of the power and authority of Daniel's God, acted with swift justice. The conspirators who had schemed to destroy the righteous were themselves thrown into the lion's den, along with their families. And this time the beast did not hold back. Their savagery was instant, confirming to all who watched that Daniel's survival was not due to chance, but to a divine miracle. But more than vengeance, what came next was revolutionary. Darius issued a decree not just to his court, but to every people, nation, and language within his vast dominion. The message was clear and undeniable. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. And he didn't stop there. He proclaimed God's character, that he is the living God whose kingdom will never be destroyed, who performs signs and wonders and who rescues and saves. It was an imperial endorsement of the Most High, broadcast from the throne of one of history's most powerful empires. And so, Daniel prospered, not just in wealth or status but in legacy. Under Darius, and later under Cyrus the Persian, he continued to serve as a light in a dark world. But his influence didn't stop with politics. God began to reveal to him visions, glimpses of what was to come. In chapter 7, Daniel saw 4 great beasts, symbolizing kingdoms that would rise and fall, visions that would echo into the prophecies of Revelation. In chapter 8, he foresaw the rise of Greece and Persia with astonishing accuracy. And in chapter 9, he received the prophecy of the 70 weeks, offering a timeline that pointed directly to the arrival of the Messiah. Daniel's visions were not just historical, they were eternal. They gave hope to the exiled Jews and became foundations of Christian eschatology. Even Jesus himself referred to Daniel in his teachings about the end times, validating the prophet's divine insight. Daniel's story is not merely one of survival, it is one of unwavering faith in the face of impossible odds. His example speaks to every generation, reminding us that no decree, no enemy, no lion's den can stand against the power of a living God. In a world that often silences truth, Daniel's life thunders a message that echoes across centuries. Trust in God, and he will shut the mouths of lions. His story lives on as a prophetic witness that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men, and that those who stand for him will never stand alone. Thank you for watching this far. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue receiving the next content. Until the next video, and may God bless you.